What has happened in the world that normal now passes as excellence? Yesterday. When did we lower our standards? Yesterday. We are living in an environment where people are blind. What you don't see, you don't know. Out of sight, out of mind.
Something bad. Our husbands aren't coming back. We're on our own. They stole a lot of money. And now people want it from us. Now the best thing we have going for us is being who we are.
Why?
Because no one thinks we have the balls to pull this off.
When this world's got you down on your knees.
If this whole thing goes wrong, I want my kids to know that I didn't just sit there and take it. I did something.
In this city, you reap what you sow.
Let's hope so.
Hello, everyone.
He did.
Good morning. We made it. I just got Nice.
Guys, simply look at this camera here, please. And this way.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? Whoa! You guys are excited, aren't you?
Hello, Toronto!
This is a very exciting night for us.
I'm really freaking excited to be here tonight.
What a great audience.
I'm so excited to be here. It's such a great honor.
And I'm so honored to be able to show my film to this august crowd.
What's really fun is people who love film, and you are all that, and we're very proud and happy to be here with all of you.
We should not be afraid to tell stories because we are afraid that people will judge.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity and a platform to be able to showcase our work as female filmmakers.
This is for my parents who couldn't come, so thank you. I'm going to prove it to them. I did it!
I've just realised what TIFF actually stands for. Toronto is fantastic.
This is the story of our city, and we're a very proud city, and I want the world to see it.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Welcome to the press conference for Widows. I'm Alicia Malone from Turner Classic Movies, Filmstruck, Fandango, and I'm joined by an incredible array of talent up here. I'll go from your left to right, starting at the back. Colin Farrell, Brian Tyree Henry, Daniel Kaluuya, writer Gillian Flynn, composer Hans Zimmer. Over there we have Cynthia Erivo, Michelle Rodriguez, Elizabeth Debicki, Viola Davis, and of course the writer-director Steve McQueen.
That's impressive. That was amazing.
That was great. I got it. I got it all. So I'm going to kick off with a couple of questions before we open it up to you guys. So starting with you, Steve, I was reading that this is based on a 1980s British TV show. Has this been a long-standing project that you wanted to tackle?
Well, it's been a long-standing thing in my personal life because I saw Widows on television in 1983, written by Linda LaPlante, and it just sort of spoke to me as a 13-year-old black boy in London. And on screen were these 4 women who were being sort of judged in a way that they couldn't achieve and judged by their appearance rather than their character. And at that point, I was too in a London school. My compass was, in a way, starting to be set in a direction which obviously wasn't one which I thought that wasn't my destination. And that TV show somehow, it just sort of, it gave me sort of a connection with these women that they can achieve. So it was really, it's a kind of been a personal journey. And it's been 35 years, of course. And I, of course, at 13 years old, I never had the idea that I would be a filmmaker. So to be here today with these amazing artists is, it's kind of surreal.
It's got so many compelling characters and so many great themes, emotional depth to it. So Gillian, when you're adapting a TV show or you're taking these ideas and trying to make it into a film, how did you go about balancing so many characters?
First, Steve said watch the show. So I watched the whole thing. I took notes once, and that's what I always do. I did the same thing when I adapted Gone Girl, my book. I read it one more time, and then I didn't let myself look at it again because it's like you have to make it. It has to become its own thing. And so I watched it, took notes, and then Steve and I kind of realized that it had to be. It had to become its own thing and breathe its own thing and create new characters and what did we want to do? What did we want to make? What did we want to say about these women, about their lives, about cities and corruption and gender and race and everything and boy did we we piled a lot in, right, Steve? I mean, we could have made a miniseries at first. It was kind of like we had so much to work from and we kind of just saw where it went. He and I didn't necessarily assign roles to each other. It wasn't like Steve writes the boy parts and I write the girl parts or anything like that. We just kind of just began and started this great journey together.
Yeah, there's so much to dig into. So Cynthia, this was a great first feature film for you. What were the themes that particularly appealed to you?
I think that it's rare that we find film or any entertainment that allows women to work together in their own individual ways. Each one of these women has their quirk. They're all very different, and yet somehow they find connection with each other, and they help each other to take control of their individual lives. And that is the thing that was like, whoa, this is something I want to be a part of, for sure. Yeah.
There's also that great line in the trailer, Viola, where you say that people wouldn't expect these women to have the balls to do it. How much fun is it where you get to play characters that subvert expectations?
I love it because I love it in my own life when I surpass expectations. I love when people underestimate me. And I also I think that it's only when you're in dire circumstances that you see really what you're made of. I think that when you have it easy, I think that you can definitely wear the mask that grins and lies. So these women are absolutely catapulted together in dire circumstances, and I think it's a terrific metaphor for how change happens. Because change happens when you're forced into it, kicking and screaming. And these women are forced to take ownership of their lives. If their husbands hadn't died, Lord knows where they would be. Still kind of living their own dream. But I thought it was a terrific metaphor. I certainly love kicking ass. I love carrying a gun. Not in my life, but on screen. I absolutely love it. I carry that power into my own life. It always helps me to be a little bit better.
Well, because usually when we talk about strong female characters on screen, it's always in relation to men and how they can do things the same as men can do them. But Michelle, what I liked here was there was a lot of strength in vulnerability.
Yeah, it was tough. I gotta say, you know, I had to pretty much murder my ego to do this movie, you know, because there was a side of femininity that I guess I didn't truly respect, you know, the kind of femininity that I would find in my own mother. You know, it's this vulnerability, this unconditional love that's always being stomped on by society, by men, by, you know, bad relationships, people who take people for granted. And to see women suffer most of my life growing up, you know, just for loving unconditionally, it was painful for me to play a character like that. And I was like, why do you want me to go to such an uncomfortable place, Steve?
Because you're an expert. Observer.
That's right. But yeah, you know, it's definitely, it was a journey into a place that I hadn't gone before. So.
Survival is a word that I would use a lot with this film, is particularly with the women finding creative ways to survive. Elizabeth, with your character in particular, she's a survivor.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing that really spoke to me about her. She has this sort of quiet strength, and I think where we find her at the beginning of the film, there are many things in her life that could be breaking her, like the abuse that she suffers and the roles she has to play are so stagnating, and she really doesn't have any sense of self-worth. But she, I don't believe, ever sees herself as a victim. She just sees herself as a woman who's living in these circumstances. And there's a tragedy in that, I suppose, because it is so common. But because she's thrust into these circumstances and meets these women, and I think her relationship, particularly with Veronica becomes a sort of role model, even sort of reluctantly. But she is taught sort of not in a linear way, in a sort of a cumulative way, these life experiences. And every little time she achieves something or fails and then achieves something, it's such a quiet victory for her. And I feel like many women, I hope, sort of relate to that journey.
And while the heist is going on, we have the man's world of politics behind us. So, Colin, how do you describe the men in this movie and your character in particular?
I won't describe any of the other lads, but my own character, I mean, I couldn't resist the innate charge of judgment that I felt when I read the script first. There is a certain moral code that he lives within without even grasping the consequences of it, because my character Jack Mulligan is so lost in his own internal emotional upheaval, having been carved from a relationship with his father that was one of kind of, I feel psychological and emotional violence, and one of expectation, so that he was never allowed to find his own way. But he is, I can safely say in my own reckoning, having played him, he is a man of deceit, and he is a man of self-interest, but he's also got an incredible loneliness to him. It's a life of dreams that have not only been realized, but not even had the permission to be formed. So he has no idea what his own path would be. So his frustration comes to great consequence at a time of great change within the socio-political system within Chicago. And he is, in his own way, a victim as much of the actions of his father as he is the actions of himself that have been kind of bequeathed to him pre-death of his father, if that's possible. And I got to work with, you know, Steve, whose work I've adored since I saw Hunger, and I got to work with incredible actors all around, and particularly closely with Robert Duvall, which was such a great joy for me, you know. But Gillian and Steve both wrote characters across the board in reading the script of just such complexity. There are so many different demographics of American and, of course, global society that are represented by so many of these characters, whether it's somebody who has to, by way of being kind of put in a corner, sell their body, you know, for survival, or a single mother's journey and plight, you know, things like greed, avarice, hope, love. You know, I mean, I feel like a counterforce to love in this film, whereas there's so much incredible love on display, particularly between the women. The men are fighting for scraps. The women are fighting for their souls. I tell you, which side of the journey is more noble to you? You know, so that's where we pick up the rear.
Yeah, well, there's so much for each of you as actors to dig into with this film. You know, Brian, your character.
Consequential scraps.
Consequential scraps, yeah.
The kind of scraps that really do go out into the world
Yeah.
and affect people in sometimes despicably negative ways. I want to be clear on that.
Yes, absolutely. So, Brian, you got to play a character that has this menace, but also some humor as well. Was that fun to dig into?
Torturing dogs is what I do best, I think. I don't know. Jamal Manning, pardon me, is he holds a dear place in my heart because at the same time, you know, I hear Colin talk about, you know, Jack, and I keep saying we're two sides of the same coin. It's just like if you spin that coin on its side, like which way will it fall? So for me, I took a lot from this movie because there's two different ways to be in this world, I think. You can either survive it or you can live in it. And I feel like we all in this movie are trying to figure out which way to go and which way the world is putting us. So for Jamal and his brother, you know, we are from Chicago. That is our place. That is where we were placed. That is where, you know, what we know. But at the same time, we've watched it, you know, kind of take what it wants from us and leave us with what's left. And then we want to do what they do. We want what they have. We want to make sure that not only are we heard, but we're respected and feared at the same time. As far as the humor in it, you know, sometimes when you're in situations like that where you feel like you're boxed in, you have to find a way to kind of like pierce through that with humor. And I feel like with Jamal, especially, like he, you know, talk about having some balls. Like, I mean, you know, he sees this other woman who, you know, has this life in this, you know, palatial penthouse, and you know, your husband is still stealing from people like me, and you get to sit up here with this beautiful little fluffy white dog, and it's pissing me off, and I want my goddamn money. So it's like, I feel like Jamal is pretty much just like straight through, like, you is there a dog? But yeah, you know, I mean, it says something about how we pin each other against each other, you know, like, you know, the haves and the have-nots and whatever. But I feel like for Jamal, I think it's really that he does care about his community. I think he really does care about where he is. I think he really does have a heart in there that is yearning to be heard. But at the same time, if I see these old bosses doing it like that, the new generation can come in and take it just as even better than you can by any means necessary. Ellipses. So, you know, that's where I feel, and also the brotherhood between Jatem and I, that's something that I really, really, really enjoyed, because it's something to be said about that unspoken bond for somebody who will literally ride or die for you. You know what I mean? Like, to literally ride. I always use this analogy, it's so poor taste, but I'm like, who's gonna drive my Bronco? You know what I mean? Like, when it comes down to it, like, who will not ask the questions? Who will be there? Who will have the tank filled? Who will literally, like, you know? And I feel like that is what the Manning brothers are, like, without anything, like, without any doubt in their mind, they have each other. They're each other's anchor. We just may do it a completely different way, but, you know, at the end of the day, you know, it gets done.
Yeah, very brutal way. Daniel, your character in particular is quite violent, but do you feel that it is about the brotherhood, that he's trying to get there by any means necessary?
It has to be. It's love. He's motivated by love. The whole, like, a lot of Jatem's interaction with his brother is, I don't agree with what you're doing. I don't agree with what you're doing. But he acts for him. Do you know what I'm saying? He still supports him. That's unconditional. It's like, I don't know where you're going, but I'm here on that journey with you. And that's where, so then all his deeds are rooted in a truth. I think Jatem is very honest. He's not pretending to be something that he's not. I want that, and I'm willing to do anything to get that. And so I understood him. And there was a weird integrity to him. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like one of the closing stages of seeing him is like, he's the pride that he has for his brother. Where he doesn't even agree with where direction he's going, but I'm still like, I'm proud of you, you know? And that's the only way to kind of lock into what he has to do, and that's just the language he uses to express that love, which is symptomatic of the society and the world that he's grown up in.
Well, speaking of collaboration and the language used, Hans, you've worked with Steve McQueen before on 12 Years a Slave. What was it like this time around? What kind of influences did you use? Because it feels like there's a real tension to the music.
Well, I come to this project in a slightly strange way because I'm older than all of you guys. I actually, very early on in my life, I was the T-boy for the composer on the original television series. So I'd actually gone through a version of this journey before, and I remember working on it. I come from a mother that was very strong, and I was watching her fight impossible battles and for her child, So I remember at the time thinking how important this was, and how this television series was going to change the world, and things were going to get good, and things were going to become fine, and women were going to have a place, and a voice. And so when Steve started to talk to me about this, I realized that things hadn't gotten better. If anything, they had gotten worse and more brutal and more fragmented. And one thing Steve asked me, which I thought was he asked me lots of things, but I think the thing that stuck with me was, he said, "Are you in love?" And I'm saying, "Yeah, I'm in love." He was checking, do I love women? And I think that, so I kept coming from that place. I kept coming from, I want to ennoble, I want to show, I want to show their strength. I want to show, that was, the tension part, that was, we knew we had to go and do this, but I wanted to show a particular type of loneliness as well. And
God, I love you guys so much. It's just like, it really warms my heart to know that people like you exist in the world. Really
no,
does.
but it's, no, because we're all in this together. This is the thing,
It's functional, I get it.
Right. So and actually, something else I just want to say about. I always feel with Steve, and his editor Joe Walker and his DP, there are always two scores going on. There's the score that Steve creates, and it's like the way he shoots film is like music. And then all I do is I orchestrate his music, and that's all that happens. So that's it.
Yeah, it works really well. Now we have time.
Can I add something? I think what's obviously evident on stage is you have this amazing cast that, I think as Robert Altman said, what I want to do is turn up in the morning and say action and say cut. And a lot of times that's what happened, because you have on the stage the most, intelligent, engaged artists. So to have that with you on set, and you can see the evidence of that here, highly charged, highly engaged, and willing to risk, it's just heaven. So that's what I say. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I was trying to count how many Oscar nominations, Grammys, BAFTAs, Tonys, but I lost count with all these amazing people. So now we have time for some questions. Yes, down here. And there'll be a microphone coming to you.
Andrea Case, CTV News, Toronto. You were able to watch the film last night with a real audience. Can you tell me, especially you, young lady, what was that like to take that all in?
That was surreal to see what the audience reaction, like audible audience reactions, and like it was strange, very strange to see myself that big on screen. That's really daunting. It's very strange. I'm not used to it yet. I will tell you when I am. But it was a wonderful experience to be in the room and to soak up the energy that people were giving. And around me, they were constantly with what was going on. There was the biggest round of applause when, I don't know, has everyone watched it in here?
But it's also being live streamed.
Okay, so there's a massive moment in the film that happens with this woman here, and there was a huge round of applause, but like from the gut of people, it was a roar, and I've never really seen that in a film theatre before. That's like, to me, we call it a cinema in London. I'm trying to find the right word. We call it a cinema. I've never seen that in the cinema before. It was really incredible to see that people still are that engaged when it comes to film, and it was wonderful to be a part of a film that did that. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of took me back to like when I would go to the Dollar Theater.
I was gonna say Magic Johnson.
Yeah, like, because I couldn't, my family wouldn't send me to the movies when it was like $8.50. You had to wait till $1 movie came out, so everybody already saw it, but whatever. But it just harkened back to those moments where you're sitting there and you all of a sudden with this audience, we have all agreed to come and go on this journey together, right? And watching Widows the other night, I mean, it was unbelievable to hear people gasp and to watch people clap and applaud and to like really want these central characters to win. You know what I mean? And you forget that it's been a long time since I've seen movies do that.
And there has to be recognition.
Yeah,
the audience had to recognize themselves somewhere in the film.
Absolutely, man. And it like I felt that charge last night, and I literally think I wouldn't have waited to see this in a $1 movie. I'm just saying, but like now, if I would definitely, I would definitely be one of those audience members. Yeah.
Yeah, you got to see it with the crowd. A question down here.
Eli Glaster, CBC News. Steve, I'd love to hear about the women in your life, because we've heard from, well, I mean that have inspired you, that you drew on for inspiration. Because we hear from Michelle, from Viola, how you get this vulnerability out of them, how you get this femininity out of them. So where does that come from? What are you inspired by?
Women, of course, you know. It's not a silly question. It's just one of the things. It's just I've been so privileged to sort of be friends with, have a partner with, have a mother with, have a daughter, who are just great people, and who happen to have vaginas, and you know, and I just feel that. You know, great, and that's it, really. I mean, I got a willy.
Yes, down here.
So nervous. Okay, so I think the film was incredible. Just to see Chicago and racial profiling and devaluing of black bodies in of itself was powerful. But I wanted to talk about, or ask about rather, the interplay between your character and your father, because he openly said the N-word close to the beginning of the movie. You didn't react, and then even towards the end, there was the narrative.
I think I did react.
Well, you were like, what? It was like a conversation.
Yeah.
So, and then you were like, at the end, as if you were better than him, that morality piece. And I feel like that's white supremacy. It's like secret conversations and like who's really defending, who's really an ally. So do you think that'll come out in conversations of the movie?
Well, it has already by virtue of your
Right.
no, totally.
Right. There it is. Front row and center.
Fantastic. You know, it has by virtue of your question. And look, the majority of, if not all, the wrongdoings in the world take place in silent conversations. You know, they take place in parts of the world where the cameras don't look. So this is a conversation that's been going on between him and his father, and it's part of, I believe, excuse my grandiosity, but Jack Mulligan might have a slightly purer soul than his father. Only slightly. Only slightly. But thought sometimes, if pursued to a deep enough place, can make reality present, can create reality, can shape reality. Hence, your question is a very important one. It came from your heart, and then it went through your thought process, and you presented it to me. So thought is huge. So if a man thinks he is something, because so often we are told we are things by people, including our parents, that have no idea what our essence is. We are only reflections of them or what they wish they were. And I am a reflection not of what my father hoped me to be. I am a weakness as far as my dad's concerned in this film. And it's the weakness sometimes, or what people who claim to be strong perceive as weakness, is where the seed of change lives.
Ooh, preach, baby, preach!
Well,
all right.
No, but like truly, you know.
How great
but
thou
God, like not to defend him, but God bless Jack Mulligan with it. But the slightest tilt of his head when his father uses the N-word is about all that man can manage at that point. Yeah, well, you know, there was, no, for me, but that's a different deal. Thank God I'm still washing Jack Mulligan off me. Wire brush twice a day, but no, thank you for your question.
I mean, these are the kind of debates that need to happen. I mean, these are the kind of debates that need to happen. And you know, we're no fools. We know we're living in the real world, and that's what this movie is about. It's about the real world and what happens behind, you know, what happens in public, what happens in private. We don't have to just look at the TV and see our politicians, you know, what happens in public happens in private. So it's, you know, we're no fools. And we have to sort of, you know, project reality on screen, because that's what art's about in some ways, and trying to transform it, trying to understand it, and trying to sort of reveal it.
We'll go up there. Yeah, you.
Hi, I'm Kenny from Indonesia, and this is for Gillian. I just want to say, like, Gone Girl made me want to read books again. Thank you for that. And how difficult was it, or how different was it to create this movie to have like these 4 strong female characters compared when you did Gone Girl and you have a strong female character compared to this one? And Steve, thank you for bringing all these talents. Like Viola, you're a god. Cynthia, I saw you on Broadway on Color Purple. It blew my mind. Thank you.
Well, first of all, I also want to start with saying I began with Linda LaPlante's amazing series, and I forgot to mention her when I first started out. So bow down to her, because people have been asking me, you know, how did you update it, and you know, how did you create it? And I mean, she was pioneering way back when in the 80s. So I mean, I did want to mention her personally. She is such a force of nature. So you know, Steve and I were blessed with getting to start with these 4 amazing female characters that she had created way back when. So I do want to say thank you, Linda LaPlante. I was, you know, to get to play with these 4 women characters, to get to, I mean, how often do you get to see not one amazing and strong and conflicted and complicated female character, but 4 on screen? They're from different backgrounds, different races, you know, different socioeconomic classes, and to see them come together. And what was cool about putting them in a heist film is to get to see them work together and get to see their brains in action. I mean, that's what I've always loved about heist films. Is heist films are all about, you know, how do you solve problems? How do you fight together? How do you argue together? And to get to see these women kind of overcome these differences, come alive. I mean, I wouldn't suggest, you know, coming alive necessarily while robbing people. It's not always the best way to like find yourself always, but it's my way. But to, you know, these are women who have been broken and ruined and hurt by, you know, the male power structure in many ways, and to get to see them to rise to the challenge, find their voices, and find these very different voices. I mean, that was what was so cool. Is one wall of my writing room is just a whiteboard, and so I get to write all over it and wipe it down when I want to. And I had one section was for each of the women. And I would write down kind of what they were thinking, what they liked to eat, where they wanted to, what their dream vacations. Did they remember to send out cards for birthdays or not? I mean, all the different types. I knew these women so well so that I could capture their voices. You know, were they the type of people who kept house plants? Were they the type of people, you know, I knew them so well, and to get to know them in that way. And my husband and I would argue about, you know, who he liked best, and you know, he read them constantly, and oh, Belle wouldn't say that, and you know, and these different types of I knew them so well, and so it was such a joy to not get to have just one woman for a change on screen, but to get to have 4 women, and to know them so well and to love them so much, even when they were doing. I'm about to say a bad word. I'm a sailor in a flower dress, but to get them to have these 4 different women, to get them to see the play and fight and come alive and find their voices. It was just a about to say a bad word again. It was just pure joy. I really was. I felt incredibly privileged. So thank you.
Yeah, we'll go in the second row there.
Thank you. Keith Whittier, Auto Life Magazine. 2 quick questions. Mr. McQueen, I look and I see that you're surrounded by this ridiculously murderer's row of talent. Behind you, you've got one of the best authors, you've got one of the best composers, and then to your right, this amazingly talented cast. At this stage in your career, is casting difficult, or is it just making a phone call and saying, hey, I'm the guy who made 12 Years a Slave, do you want a job? And then my second question for Miss Davis, truly an honor. Obviously, you're one of the most respected actresses in Hollywood. You've won all of the awards. At this stage in your career, how do you measure success?
Well, I want to answer. I just want to speak what you said about Viola, and obviously Viola can speak for herself, but she hasn't done enough. You know, she needs to do more. There's so much roles that this woman can do. You know, we need a journey. We need Viola Davis' library of pictures. And, you know, there just isn't enough. So, you know, we need more. More, you know, I wanted to see aqua diving. I don't know. I wanted to see,
Agreed.
I don't know, whatever. We
Agreed.
need more of Viola Davis pictures. And as far as the casting is concerned, it's a journey. It's a journey. You know, auditions and people turn you down. You know, people getting acquainted with people. It's a journey, but also first and foremost, I have a great casting director called Francine Mazer, and she's actually an artist who happens to be a casting director, and she's extraordinary to sort of have dialogue with and to talk with, and of course Gillian and Ian Canning and Emil Sherman, who are the 2 great producers on this picture. You know, that's when you have a team like that, particularly, you know, a new Regency, of course, I'm sorry, advertising, but you know, when you be close with your producers, it's very, very, you know, helpful to have that kind of sort of dialogue, and with of course Gillian. But please, I think you have to answer your question.
How do I measure success? Other than being happy and joyful and all the, better question for me is how do I measure significance? You know, I think that I've already sort of achieved success. You know, you get a certain amount of money, you buy a house, you're on a TV show, which I'm at, and then you're tired. You're just tired and disillusioned. And frankly, just being honest, you're miserable a lot. You're like, I'm tired, I don't want to go to work, people don't even know how fucking hard this is. You know, you start complaining in your 8,000 square foot house, you know? And you realize that you've missed the final step, which is not success, it's significance. So how do I measure significance? I measure significance living a life bigger than myself. That's why I have a production company. When I became an actress because I saw Miss Cicely Tyson in Autobiography, Miss Jane Pittman. And she gave me permission to do it. But she also showed me a way out of poverty, of feeling invisible. And I just feel like the narratives that are created in Hollywood right now have got to become inclusive. They have got to reflect the changing world and the changing cultures. And, you know, I feel like I always have to honor, you know, that little girl who's always sitting beside me on the couch, the 8-year-old girl who's sort of excited about the 53-year-old she gets to become. So in order to satisfy, I want that little girl to be able to see images that she can attach herself to. And it gives her permission to feel like she is a part of, that she is being seen. You know, I no longer want to see a movie where the person of color gets introduced in the second scene and they're the bus driver, the social worker, the lawyer, you know, and people are saying, oh, at least they're a part of the cast. They're not a part of the main storyline, but they're there. It's not enough for them to just be there. I want them to be in the story and in the narrative.
I love you, V.
V, can I say something? Can I just say something to you? You know how you just said that Cicely Tyson gave you permission, and she was it for you.
Speak on it.
You know that you were that for me, right?
Same.
You have to, you truly have to understand that that's what you have done for me. I didn't, because you don't see it enough. You don't see the woman that gets to be messy, to be on screen and not have to be liked and be okay with that, to be intelligent. And that's what I knew I wanted to be able to do, but didn't ever see until you.
So thank you.
So thank you.
And I know this is an R-rated film, but I hope that little girls do get to see this, to see these women. So we have to wrap it up there, but please thank the cast and crew of Widows.
Thank you very much for coming.